Hi, guys. We're looking at Chapter 9, International Trade and Capital Flows. So, in this problem, we're looking at the 2001 economy of the UK, and we're told that the UK exported goods worth 192 billion pounds and exported services worth 77 billion pounds. The UK imported goods worth 225 billion pounds and imported services worth 60, 66 billion pounds. So with this first bit of information, we can answer number one, the first question, which is to calculate the UK merchandise trade deficit for 2001. So we're talking about a merchandise, so that means goods. So we simply look at the amount of goods that were exported right here, exported right there, 192 billion pounds, and the amount of goods that were imported, which was 225 billion pounds. So we simply take the amount that was imported minus the amount that was exported, and we get a deficit of 33 billion uh, pounds. Now, you could do it the other way around. You could say just if you wanted, you could say clear that. You could say 192. You could say exports. Whoops. You could say exports minus imports, and you would get a negative number, and that would be your deficit, right? So either way, okay. Um, Now, secondly, they're asking us to compute the current account balance. So the current account balance is going to be, let's just look back up here real quick. Yeah, the current account balance is going to be the net exports, which is exports minus imports, plus net income, which is income coming in minus income going out. Um, and then net transfers, which is transfers coming in minus transfers going out. So anyway, let's look at how we did this. So our first of all, net exports is going to be total. This 269 billion right here is coming from total both goods and services that were exported, right? So if we jump back up here, we can grab our calculator real quick. Where you go, right there. And we can say, okay, the exported goods were 192 plus exported services were 77. And that's going to equal 269. And that's the number we're using right down here. See, so right here, 269. And we did the same thing for total imports. We got 291 because we simply added up imported goods right here plus imported services 225 plus 66. We'll do it real quick. Let's see, clear that. 225 plus 66 equals 291, and that's what we use, right? But sorry about that. Let me just get my little green bouncing ball here. So that's what we used right there. Okay, right here. And then we got our net, and then we subtracted um, here and got our net exports. And this is a simple math, so I'm not going to bore you with actually showing you how to do this easy math. But just as long as you set it up, like you see right here, then you'll get the correct answer. So now 140 is going to be minus 131 is going to compute for us net income from abroad. So when we look back up at our problem, we can say that income from let me grab my thing again. Here we go. The income from the world coming into the UK was 140, and payments going out was 131. So the net's going to be the difference here, okay? Which is going to actually, you know what? So I don't keep having to do this over and over and over again. Let me just do two of these guys, okay? Yeah. So so it's going to be, this is going to be positive, right? Then the last part of this is net transfers. So that's simply taking the, since I have him, I can leave him there, right? So that's simply taking the transfers going to the world, going out, which was 23, and we want to subtract. Now this is where it's tricky. You want to subtract what's going out from what's coming in. So this is going to be a negative answer. So if they had 16 billion coming in, 23 going out, then you want to subtract 23 from 16 billion, as we are doing right here. And this is going to give you a negative for your net transfers. So when you do when you do all your math, you end up with a current account balance in the deficit of a negative 20 billion pounds. So that's how you do with that one. Now, once again, I said this in part one, you're going to have 2 hours to do this quiz. So I would highly encourage you to do each one of these calculations twice, just to make sure you don't make a mistake. Okay, we have 2 problems for chapter 9. Fun, right? So here we go. Let me just copy this guy. So I'll have one at the top and one at the bottom. There we go. Okay, so in the second problem, we have the U.S. economy that finds itself with a government budget deficit of 100 billion, a total domestic savings of 1,500 billion, and a total domestic physical capital investment worth $1,600 billion. So according to the National Saving and Investment Identity, what will be the current account balance? Okay. And what will be, okay, so let's just do this first one, and then we'll come to the second one. Okay, so we want to know what the current account balance is. So when we set this up, we start with a partial national savings and investment identity, and we fill in the variables or the numbers that we have, and we solve for what we do not have. So this is something I want to encourage you guys to study and restudy in your chapter. There's also some really good Khan Academy videos, which we'll look at when we do our review in the spring. But this is tricky. So I want you to really study over this, because this can be very confusing if you don't really grasp it, okay? So to try to make it this simple, we divide our equation into 2 parts. The supply of financial capital is on the left, and we want to put the demand for financial capital on the right. Now, this is how you normally see the equation, but it can be algebraically manipulated to be in many different forms, and it can be confusing. So once again, this is a chapter 9 you need to spend some time on. Okay, so now what is the supply of financial capital? It's a national savings plus the current account deficit. Now, what does this mean? When we're in deficit here, this is actually going to be a positive number, but why we say a deficit is because this is the inflow of foreign capital, the inflow of money that comes in from the world in order to balance the two sides of this expression. So this is what we do not know. We know what the savings is. We're given it in the problem of 1,500 billion. We know what the government borrowing is, because if we're saying that the government budget deficit is 100 billion, we make the assumption that, and this has to be true, that in order to make up for this deficit, the government, and I did it again, I should just leave this guy up here. Whoa, not him. So I can use it, right? Anyway, when we have a deficit, we assume that the government is going to borrow the money in order to make up this $100 billion deficit. So we put that here, move this down. We put that in here as a government borrowing of 100 billion right here, okay? That's because the government is demanding, right? It has a demand for enough money to make up for the deficit. And then the physical investment money is also demanded, because we're assuming that in order for the country, the US, to invest 100 or 1,600 billion in capital, it's going to borrow that money, right? And just really quickly, the way that works, and very, to make it very, very simple, the key here is that the money is borrowed at a lower interest rate than the return on whatever the capital investment is, right? So they actually come out ahead. All right. So now we have our equation set up. So we can easily see that given the numbers in the problem, it must be there's a capital inflow right here to make up for the deficit of 200 billion, because 1,500 plus 200 equals 1,700, and then 100 plus 1,600 equals 1,700. So that makes our equation balanced, right? Okay, and you see it right here. All right. Now then, the next part of this question is they're asking us, what will the current account, what will be the current account balance if capital investment rises by 50 billion? So if we increase the demand over here, if we have an increase on the demand side of the equation of 50 billion, what has to happen to the current account balance? Well, that's pretty obvious, right? In order for it to balance, we've got to have an additional inflow of capital of the same amount as we're demanding over here, right? $50 billion. So we just jump down here, and we can see that if capital investment increases by 50 billion, while a savings in government borrowing or the deficit remain the same, then the current account deficit must increase by 50 billion, say, to 250 billion, in order for the two sides of the equation to be equal. Easy enough. Remember, the current account deficit is the amount of money that's coming in. It's a capital inflow, which is caused by a trade deficit. So just always remember, anytime imports, the actual dollar value of imports, both goods and services, is greater than the dollar value of of exports, both goods and services, means we have a deficit, and you're going to have a capital inflow in order to make up for the deficit. If exports are greater than imports, then you're going to have a capital outflow. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the financial account or the capital account has to zero out when you add it to the current account, right? So we have a current account of 200 billion. We're going to have a capital account of negative 200 billion. Because that means that we actually need 200 billion in the financial capital, and so that's why we want 200 billion dollars to flow inflow to make up for the current account deficit. If we have a current account deficit of 200 billion, we're going to have a capital account surplus of 200 billion, because we have 200 billion more coming in than we have going out. Now, if I've totally confused you just now, read over the chapter. We're going to really spend a lot of time on reviewing this before the AP exam in May. But just it's really important to know that the current account plus the financial or the capital account. Sometimes you'll see a financial, sometimes you'll see capital. But anyway, it's the financial account. Those two need to add up to be zero. Okay. All right. And the last problem we're going to do is from chapter 10, aggregate demand, aggregate supply. And we have a table and the graph, right? So let's look at this. So we've got the price level, and we have the aggregate, the demand curve right here in blue before COVID-19 happened, and we have the aggregate supply before COVID in where is it? Actually, it's in blue here. Sorry, here's the demand here. Oh, sorry about that. Here's the demand before COVID. Here's the supply before COVID, right? See, it's a color coded so you don't get confused like I just did, right? Anyway, and then after COVID, you've got a new supply shifted way back to the left, and you've got a new demand which also shifted to the left. As you know, as a result of COVID-19, since last March, our economy has shrunk, has contracted. Our GDP has fallen, very high unemployment. We're very far below full employment. We're in a recession, so there is a recessionary gap, and some of the economic destruction, I should say, is going to be pretty much permanent. Factories, firms have shut down permanently, and we've had a decrease in the capital investment. So we can also say that the long run aggregate supply, which before COVID was this purple vertical curve right here, the long run aggregate supply, which represents the potential for the GDP, actually after COVID has shifted some to the left, so that our economy has actually shrunk, okay? Or the potential has actually gotten smaller, all right? I actually want to show you guys something here. Let's see, what is this? Let me make sure I don't show you the quiz. I don't want it to do that, which I don't think I will. No, this isn't it. Okay, I want to show you. Well, I'll get to that because I want to show you what this leftward shift in the long run aggregate, the supply actually does to the production possibility curve, or the production possibilities frontier. So let's get to our questions here. We've actually pretty much, I mean, this is not going to be hard. I mean, this is pretty obvious. So before COVID was a and this, by the way, is the economy of a make-believe country called Santher. So before COVID was a Santher's economy operating at full potential. How do you know? Well, yes, because before COVID, right here, our a potential, or the long run aggregate supply curve was purple right here, and our demand, our aggregate demand and aggregate supply was here and here. So we're right here. So we're operating right here where the equilibrium in the economy is at potential. So we are at a potential. So you know, because where the aggregate demand intersects with the aggregate supply is right also intersecting with the long run aggregate supply curve. So we're at the potential at a price level of 100 and an output of 800 billion right there. Okay. Now what happens after a COVID? Well, after a COVID, you have a new equilibrium way back here. Okay, way back here. Because you had a shift, because the new aggregate demands is ugly green right here, and the new aggregate supply is the blue. So we go way back to here, and a much lower output, but because they both shifted, we're at the same price level. So we have the same price level, just a lot lower output. And even though a potential, or the long run aggregate supply, shifted somewhat to the left, because the one after COVID is orangey brown, right, or orange, I guess. There's still a very large recessionary gap right here. So full employment after a COVID would be here, right? But we're way back here. So no, we're not operating at a full employment, because the market equilibrium, not the market, the economy's equilibrium, where aggregate supply intersects aggregate demand, is below potential. The potential output of the economy, which is where the new long run aggregate supply curve is right there, right? Which is 750. Okay. The new output equilibrium is 650 right there. See, where aggregate supply equals aggregate demand. Okay. Next question. Before COVID, okay, we've already answered. Oh no, we haven't. But before COVID, was Santher's economy operating at full employment? Yes, it was, because it was operating right at where the long run aggregate supply curve is before, which is the purple, and this is where we say is where we say the economy is at full employment. Okay, so yes. What about after? No, right? Because the full employment would be 750 and output at 750, but we're way back here after, so we're operating below full employment. So we have a very high unemployment rate, a very high rate of unemployment after COVID. Okay. So question 3, did the COVID-19 virus create an inflationary or a recessionary gap? A recessionary gap, because we're below full employment, which is a recession. Okay, so that's easy. 4, how did the COVID-19 virus affect potential GDP? How do you know? Well, because the long run aggregate supply curve shifted to the left, we went from the purple here to the orange. We know that the potential decreased. The total economy shrunk or contracted. So the potential now is lower than what it was. It went from 800 billion down to 750 billion. Okay. And 5, how does your answer for question 4 affect Santhar's production possibilities, frontier or PPF? And I've actually got the diagram of that. Let me come back here. I didn't have it up, so just give me 1 second here to show you. Right here, okay. Actually, right here, right? So it actually went from out here down, so it actually shrunk, right? So we could say that the production possibilities frontier shifted inward into the left, so not the opposite of what these areas are showing. I thought I actually had that somewhere. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay, I did have it. It's way down here at the bottom. Okay, so it went this way, right? So these outside errors is what happened. So we can say the answer, you can just, write it out. If Santhar's long run aggregate supply curve shifts left, that means the economy, just jump up here so you can see where I'm reading here. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. That means that the economy is contracting, so its production possibilities frontier, PPF, will shift left or contract toward the southwest. This is in the southwest direction here, right? Going from here, going from here to here. So it's gonna contract. Now, fair warning. The quiz question that you have is going to be the same, same economy, Santhar, but the before and after is going to be before an effective vaccine is distributed throughout the entire population. That's before, and then after the vaccine for COVID is distributed throughout the entire population. So just think about that. It means that everything that we went over here is what's going to happen when we actually get the vaccine and everyone gets it, and we assume that the virus has been destroyed and no one's going to get sick, then the opposite is going to happen, right? You're going to have things shifting the other way. So you'll have the aggregate demand is shifting to the right. You'll have aggregate supply shifting to the right. You'll have more supply, more demand, and you'll actually change the potential because you will start to rebuild the businesses and factories and people. So you're going to have, it's going to be the same logic and the same rationale used here. It's just you're going to have what's happened is going to have the exact opposite effect of what we just went over, because obviously a a vaccine that's effective, that actually works and everybody gets it, is going to have the opposite effect of the virus, of making everyone sick. Okay, so that's your quiz. Good luck. You'll have once again, you'll have 2 hours. So double check all your answers and good luck.